Hey everybody, I'm today in downtown Indianapolis and I'm along Georgia Street and actually several other places, just kind of roaming around a little bit because this is a pretty big week in Indianapolis. It's the Final Four weekend, and you can see behind me here, it's just kind of all over the city, all the Final Four, the NCAA men's basketball tournaments going on. So we want to get into today a little bit about why Indianapolis is such a big sports city. So you don't have to love sports, of course, to live in Indianapolis, but if you do love sports, then it's a pretty darn good place to be. So we're gonna get into that just a little bit in this video today, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you wanna know everything there is to know about Indianapolis, living here, or any of the suburbs at all, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video, each and every week. And we have people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions about Indianapolis, of course, and all the different suburbs out there and what it's like to live in those places. So if you have questions at all about any place in Indianapolis, any neighborhood, or any of the suburbs, then don't hesitate to reach out. Any ways you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to the Indy Metro. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to talk about Indianapolis and the fact that it's a sports town, and you know, that's really not unique. There are a lot of cities out there that consider themselves sports towns, and rightfully so. I mean, you look at places like New York, Boston, Los Angeles, Miami, and you can get in, of course, to some other larger cities across the country, and they have professional sports teams. They've got just all kinds of sports going on throughout the entire year. So Indianapolis is no different. But Indianapolis, I mean, it really is truly a sports town, not just from a professional standpoint, but also from the amateur standpoint too. So it's kind of considered the amateur sports capital of the world, and for a couple reasons. But the Pan Am Games have been here in the past, back in the 80s, so it's been a long time ago, but that's an enormous amateur sports event. But the NCAA headquarters are here in Indianapolis. In fact, I'm pretty close to it. At the beginning of the video here, I was over on Georgia Street, which right now is really where a lot of the kind of the party atmosphere is for Big Dance, March Madness, the men's NCAA Final Four. And you can see behind me, just across one of these sky bridges, the fact that it's decorated out, and then the JW Marriott, which is super cool. They put the bracket up there on the side of the hotel, which is just really pretty awesome. It's cool to see in person. But of course, the NCAA tournament's being played here, the NCAA headquarters. It just makes a whole lot of sense. Now, there's a reason why Indianapolis gets so many big events, like the men's Final Four. It also hosts the women's Final Four from time to time too, but the men's Final Four it hosts every 5 or 6 years or so, and it's done that since the early 90s, about 1991, along a busy road. It's quite happening down here right now, but not as happening as Georgia Street, so I had to get off that because it was just a little bit too loud. But in this particular city, with the NCAA here, and actually with the National High School Sports Association here too, it has a big amateur theme. So you're going to see that strewn throughout the city. Of course, youth sports are really big in Indianapolis as well, so it's not just Indianapolis proper, but you get out into the suburbs, all very, very big. And of course, things like basketball, very big in Indiana, that's for sure. But the Indiana Sports Corp, or Indiana Sports Corporation, it's a group that is responsible for putting out bids for really big events in Indianapolis. And they've done this for many, many, many years. So they work really hard to bring some of these events to Indianapolis. For example, like the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is here in 2012, and Indianapolis, boy, we had a really fantastic weather week that week when the Super Bowl is here, and it just went very, very well. We probably will have the Super Bowl again at some point in the future. We don't know exactly when that's going to be, but it will happen again. The unfortunate part is that Indianapolis it's a northern city, and so whenever the Super Bowl is being played in very, very early February, typically it's pretty cold here. But there are ways around that for sure. But Indianapolis is just set up for big events like that really, really well. So there are other big cities that have a great setup too, but Indianapolis is a little bit special in that all of the major stadiums in Indianapolis are right pretty much next to one another. So the longest walk that you're really going to have from one to the other might be from Bankers Life Fieldhouse over to Victory Field, and that's depending on how fast you're walking. I mean, that's a 10 to 12-ish minute walk, somewhere in there. It's just not that far. Going from Bankers Life Fieldhouse to Lucas Oil, that's a less than 10-minute walks, all really, really tight and compact. And of course, within that area, you have plenty of restaurants and then lots of things in the hospitality industry like hotels. So it's set up really, really well for actually just getting a lot of people into this particular small area. And then you have an area like Georgia Street, which is set up for kind of an outdoor festival, just kind of like the NCAA Men's Final Four is going to be this particular weekend. And that makes the logistics of a lot of things very simple. So you don't have a stadium that's way on the outskirts of a city and everybody has to drive out to that, and then their hotel, of course, isn't really anywhere close to it, or restaurants aren't anywhere close. It's just sort of out there on its own, and then everybody has to go someplace else in order to have their party or do anything outside of the game or whatever it is that they're actually going to watch. So when I talk to people across the country about Indianapolis being a sports town, people have asked, is that really true? And yeah, it is true. Indianapolis is a sports town. There's something going on all year long, not just a special event like the Super Bowl or the Final Four, but you of course have the Indianapolis Colts, you've got the Indiana Pacers, you've got the Indiana Fever, you've got the Indianapolis Indians, which is a AAA baseball team for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then we've got a soccer team, although it's not MLS, still pretty incredibly entertaining to watch. They play at Lucas Oil Stadium. And then we've got a hockey team, and it kind of goes on and on and on from there. And then we have college sports here too, like Butler University. It's located in Indianapolis, and Purdue is really close, and IU is very, very close too. So there is a lot going on all year long, but you don't have to love sports to live in Indianapolis. Just like if you live in New York City. Obviously, New York City is a big sports town, but you don't have to love sports or follow sports to love living in New York. Just like that here in Indianapolis. And that's one of the other things about being a sports town and holding big events like this, is that it's pretty easy to avoid them if you don't want to get into that mix. So you know for a fact that everything is happening downtown, and if you don't want to get in the mix of the Final Four and all the traffic that's involved and all the people that are around, then you just stay away from downtown. You stay out suburbs where you live or some other neighborhood in Indianapolis, and you're probably not going to really notice that anything is going on. So that's one pretty good advantage. Another thing would be Colts game, something like that. Or the Indianapolis 500 is another obviously huge sport event. It's the biggest really sporting event in the entire world. It holds the most people for one single event. It happens right here in Indianapolis. In fact, it's just about 5 or 6 miles from where I'm standing off to the west, the Speedway, and the city, the town actually of Speedway, Indiana, which is just nestled right in Indianapolis, which is kind of a unique little situation. Living there, you'd have a Speedway address, not an Indianapolis address, even though it feels like you're in Indianapolis. But the Speedway is there, and if you don't want to mess with the Indianapolis 500 and the literally hundreds of thousands of people that are there, traveling in from all over the country and all over the world to see it, you don't have to mess with it. In fact, I think it's a little bit of an advantage over Memorial Day weekend when that race is going on, or when all the events are going on out there at the track, and especially when the race is going on. The rest of Indianapolis, what I'm saying, and suburbs and all that, they're really pretty quiet. There's not a lot happening. A lot of people in Indianapolis go out to the race, so there's not much going on outside of it. And if you can avoid that particular area, you're in pretty good shape. So anyway, Indianapolis is definitely a big sports town. There is a lot going on here. So if you're moving to Indianapolis and you love sports, then you're probably in luck, unless you just can't stand the Pacers or the Colts or NCAA basketball or something like that, and you're a fan of somebody else. But anyway, you could have it here to go to or to watch anything that you want, or any big event potentially that you want to get into. We're going to have that here, but you can avoid it if you're not into that kind of thing. So if you have questions at all about what type of sports are here, or just anything regarding living in Indianapolis, then don't hesitate to reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.